Kyrie to Chronicles of Ancient Greece, the podcast that delves deep into the fascinating history, myths, and legacies of the ancient Greek world. This is episode 10, the Alpha and the Omega. Okay, so this has been a little bit of a longer hiatus than I expected, but rest assured, new episodes are always coming. First off today, I need to correct one glaring and frankly embarrassing error from last time. I am absolutely not sure how that could have happened, but for some reason I seem to have made Archimedes immortal. Or at least multiple centuries old. And even though my own personal opinion is that Archimedes absolutely belongs in the pantheon of the smartest humans who ever lived, he is not still around. Archimedes did in fact design defensive weapons for his hometown of Syracuse. It just happened to be a defense against the Romans, not the Athenians. Archimedes died during the Roman siege of Syracuse in 212 BC, despite explicit orders that he was not to be harmed. I can only imagine that the Roman commander, a man named Marcus Claudius Marcellus, uttered about the same curses as I did when I was made aware of the error. Thanks go out to listener Pericles on Spotify for alerting me to it. Anyways, back to the topic. Greek tradition loves a good origin story, and the story of the alphabet is no different. The earliest accounts credit the hero Cadmus, a prince of Phoenicia, with teaching the Greeks how to write. While that story is almost certainly an invention, Phoenician sailors and merchants active across the Mediterranean did bring their writing to the Greeks in the 8th century BC. Before we get into that actual story though, let's have a quick overview of the mythical story. Cadmus was on a task searching for his sister Europa, who was abducted by Zeus. Cadmus then consulted an oracle and founded the city of Thebes. As part of his adventures, he encountered a dragon and, after killing it of course, sowed its teeth, which grew into warriors who became his followers. He later married Harmonia and is also— wait a minute, he killed a dragon and sowed its teeth? And then the teeth grew into warriors who became his followers? It's crazy that we remember him for the alphabet and not for that. Okay, back to reality. The Phoenician script had about 22 consonant symbols and no written vowels. Absolutely fine for Semitic languages, but very awkward for Greek. The Greeks thus borrowed Phoenician characters, but repurposed some as vowels. In Greek, alpha comes from the Phoenician alep, beta from bet, and so on and so forth. Most importantly, Greek scribes used 5 of the Phoenician signs as pure vowels. Over the next few centuries, Greeks gradually adjusted and added letters. For example, phi, chi, xi, psi, as well as eta and omega, so that the final classical alphabet had 24 letters. The oldest known texts in Greek letters date to roughly the mid-8th century BC. For example, on the island of Ischia in Italy, a clay wine cup was found with a 3-line scratched poem. It proudly names itself Nestor's Cup, presumably a cheeky marketing move, and promises that whoever drains it will be seized by Aphrodite's desire. Yes, it's basically the world's first beer or wine ad. The inscription is written in the early Euboean alphabet and runs right to left in the base's design. In Athens, a wine jug was found bearing an inscription now called the Diplyon inscription. It reads a bit like a party joke. Whoever is now dancing, let him break this off and come get me, so more or less. This text, dated around 740 BC, is scratched on pottery and is likewise one of the two oldest Greek alphabet texts known. These early fragments attest that literacy started in private pottery and votive gifts, not in books. Both the Cup of Nestor and the Diplyon inscription are written in Euboean, reflecting that different cities used slightly different letter shapes. Over the next century, more inscriptions turn up on clay tablets, potsherds, and temple bases, telling us names, dedications, laws, and poems. By the way, if you look closely at the writing direction on these artifacts, you'll notice an interesting quirk. Many of the texts alternate in their direction. So they go left to right and then right to left. It is an inscription type or direction, also called boustrophodon, or literally as the ox turns. This existed for quite some time until around 500 BC. Nearly everyone settled on left to right. For a few centuries, there was no single, one true Greek alphabet. Different city-states and regions had their own alphabets, which is much like having dialects of speech in today's world. Broadly speaking, though, scholars divide these into Eastern and Western branches. The Eastern are more Ionic/Attic, and the Western are more Euboean/Boeotian. The famous Ionian alphabet of Miletus and of Athens after 403 BC was an Eastern type. It included Athens, the Asia Minor coast, the Cyclades, and some Peloponnesian cities. The Western type included Euboea, Boeotia, Thessaly, much of the Peloponnese, and the Greek colonies in Italy. Each region wrote some letters differently. Over time, of course, these alphabets converged. In particular, by the 5th century BC, Athens was using its own Attic script. After the Peloponnesian War, however, Athens officially adopted the Ionic alphabet of Miletus in 403 BC, which helped foster political unity. By the middle of the 4th century BC, nearly all of Greece and most of the Greek world had switched to that Ionic alphabet form. In one stroke, the 24-letter Ionic system became the classical Greek alphabet everyone recognized. The Western colonies, which had passed the Euboean version to the Etruscans and then Romans, meanwhile gave rise to Latin, showing once again that the Romans are basically the, yeah, you can copy my homework, just change it a little bit, of the ancient world. The archaeological record is peppered with examples of writing that illustrate how the alphabet spread. Temple inscriptions, grave markers, pottery labels, and public decrees appear in city-states across Greece. By the 6th century, city laws and treaties, once kept in oral tradition, were being carved in stone. The sheer number of inscriptions is staggering. Tens of thousands of Greek texts survive, especially from the Hellenistic and Roman eras, but even archaic Greece has hundreds of fragmentary poems, dedications, and official records. One fun Hellenistic piece reminds us how children might have learned their ABCs. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has a carved greenstone icosahedron, a 20-faced die, from the 2nd to 1st century BC, each face inscribed with a Greek letter from A, alpha, through upsilon. Only the last 4 letters are missing. Perhaps they were on a second die. This little alphabet die suggests that by Hellenistic times, the letters were used in games or teaching tools, much like modern alphabet blocks. Just imagine a Greek boy or girl rolling this die and hearing alpha, beta, training their ears to the building blocks of language. So, what did the alphabet actually do for the Greeks? Well, it unleashed an explosion of written culture. Suddenly, the great oral epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, for example, transported through the ages via the spoken word and changed and adapted with each rendition by each artist, found a way off the tongue and onto clay tablets. Hesiodic poems likely followed their Homeric counterparts in subsequent decades. While no original manuscripts survive, later papyrus fragments confirm that by the classical era, these works circulated in written form. In practical terms, writing meant laws and decrees no longer depended on memory. City-states like Athens produced written constitutions and tribute lists. Kids in a newfound democracy could read that Draco's code of harsh laws or Solon's reforms were there, rather than memorizing an ancestor's version. And, as the historian Thomas Cahill wryly observes, an alphabet with vowels meant that anyone might learn to read, even a child, a woman, or a slave. Isn't that nice? It also certainly beat Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sumerian cuneiform, which required years of specialized scribal training. This accessibility actually also had a democratic ripple effect. With easier literacy, more citizens could follow public debates, read decrees, or write petitions. Cahill suggests that an easily grasped alphabet helped spread a proto-democratic consciousness by demystifying written knowledge. The writing wasn't just for kings and priests anymore. Removing the aura of an unapproachable sacred brotherhood of scribes made people feel empowered to think and talk about politics, philosophy, and science. And if you want a little bit more modern example of what learning to read and write can do to a population, just look at the Enlightenment. Spoiler alert, it's not great for absolutist monarchs. The Greek alphabet also became the foundation for education and scholarship. By the classical era, schools taught the letters to prepare for philosophy or law. By the Hellenistic age, Alexandria's librarians were using the same script to copy every book they could find. Science and medicine journals, yes, early medicine journals, took advantage of precise notation. In short, what we now call Western civilization, literature, philosophy, mathematics, recorded history, all rode on the back of this simple alpha to omega system. As one scholar puts it, the Greek alphabet became the basis for the modern-day alphabet and thus the modern paradigm of writing down history and facts. It's almost amusing that a few extra letters, phi, chi, psi, omega, and some tilted letter forms caused a cultural revolution. If Cadmus didn't actually add vowels, the alphabet was arguably invented by need, by traders who realized their Greek clients would need E and O and A explicitly. Yet, even if the Phoenicians provided the letters, the Greeks gave them their character. By making writing widely learnable and building a tradition of public discourse, the Greek alphabet quietly rewrote the ancient world. So, there we have it. From mythic Cadmus to scribbles on clay jars, the Greek alphabet's story is both fanciful and factual. Myth gave us Cadmus and divine scribes. Reality gave us Phoenician-inspired letters, early inscriptions on wine cups and jugs, and city-states hashing out their own scripts until the Ionian alphabet won the day. In the end, the Greeks produced not only the Iliad and Odyssey, but also the very letters we still use. Well, nearly the very letters. Some do look different now. So, next time someone complains about spelling or an all caps text, remember, it could have been much, much worse. Because if Cadmus had invented the alphabet, maybe we'd be stuck without vowels to argue on social media. So, until next time, and remember, every time you send a text, you're carrying on a 2,800-year-old tradition. Spelling mistakes be damned. And oh my god, why is nobody talking about the dragon teeth?